Get her out of my house before she drops that bastard on my marble floors. Those were the first words Amelia heard before the heel of a Louboutin slammed into her stomach. She didn't scream at first. The shock stole her breath before the pain arrived. But when it came, sharp, deep, terrifying, her hands flew to her belly as instinct took over. 8 months pregnant, fragile, exhausted, and already trembling from hours of stress, she staggered back against the expensive glass railing of the penthouse balcony. The woman who kicked her, Soraya Kingston, smirked like she'd just shooed away an annoying insect. The mistress, the woman Amelia's billionaire husband had been hiding for months. The woman now standing in her penthouse as if she were the wife. The woman who had just attacked a pregnant woman without a flicker of guilt. Amelia's vision doubled for a moment, the pain radiating down her legs. She tasted metal in her mouth. Elliot Kingston, her husband of 4 years, didn't rush to help her. He didn't even move. He just stood there with his hands in his pockets like he'd already made peace with the cruelty happening in front of him. Soraya laughed, a cruel and soft sound. Relax, sweetheart. Your baby's probably fine. It takes more than a little kick to end a pregnancy. Elliot didn't look at Amelia. Instead he looked at Soraya. As if she was the wife. As if Amelia was the inconvenience. Amelia pushed herself up slowly, gripping the railing for balance, swallowing the panic rising in her throat. Why are you doing this? Her voice cracked. Soraya crossed her arms and leaned against Elliot's chest. I'm doing you a favor. You should have just signed the divorce papers quietly. But no, you had to call your lawyer. You had to complicate things. You had to pretend you still mattered. Elliot finally spoke, his voice cold and bored. Soraya, just let the staff throw her out. I'm done wasting time on this. Throw her. Amelia's knees buckled. This wasn't happening. Couldn't be happening. She'd sacrificed everything for this man. She'd defended him when her family warned her he was cold. She'd believed he'd change when he said fatherhood would soften him. She'd thought her love and loyalty meant something. But in this room, surrounded by luxury she no longer felt connected to, she realized she meant absolutely nothing to him. 2 security guards stepped forward at Elliot's nod. Big, expressionless, unbothered. Amelia backed up. No, please, I need my medical bag. My doctor. You'll survive, Elliot said without emotion. Your brothers can take care of you. Wait, I blocked all their numbers. They haven't reached you in 2 years? Soraya giggled. How sad. Pregnant and alone. I almost feel bad for you. But she didn't. Not even a little. The security guards grabbed Amelia's arms. Don't touch me, Amelia shouted, panicking as the pain tightened around her belly. You should be grateful we're not calling the police, Soraya said sweetly. You barged into my home. My home. The mistress said my home. Amelia couldn't breathe. This penthouse, every corner of it, was bought with her inheritance money. Money from her late mother. Money that Elliot convinced her to invest into their shared life. Now Soraya was claiming it. What did I ever do to you? Amelia whispered. Soraya leaned in, close enough for Amelia to smell her perfume. You existed. The guards began dragging Amelia toward the elevator. Elliot didn't look at her once. Not even when Soraya picked up Amelia's wedding ring from the coffee table, the one Amelia left there the night before because her fingers were too swollen, and slipped it onto her own hand. Fit perfectly. Stop, Amelia cried. Please, Elliot, please, our baby. Elliot finally glanced at her. A single glance. Cold. Me. Annoyed. Don't be dramatic, Amelia, he said. You're tougher than you think. After all, you survived growing up in that dangerous family of yours. The way he said dangerous made Soraya laugh. Please, Amelia begged. Just let me call someone. You're done calling anyone, Soraya cut in. I already took your phone. She held it up, flashed the screen and tossed it into the fireplace. It shattered on impact. The fire crackled, eating the last connection Amelia had to anyone outside these walls. You're insane, Amelia whispered. No, Soraya said. I'm smart. Elliot chose me. You were just a placeholder. The elevator dinged open. The guards shoved Amelia inside hard enough that she fell to her knees. The cold marble stung her palms. She felt wetness. She didn't know if it was her tears, her sweat, or something far more terrifying. Wait, my prenatal documents, my mother's bracelet, her voice trembled. Elliot pressed the elevator button to send her down. You have nothing here anymore, he said. You should have stayed quiet. The elevator doors started closing. Soraya blew her a kiss. Tell your brothers I said hi, if they even remember your name. The doors shut. Dark. Silent. Shaking uncontrollably, Amelia pressed her hands to her belly. Please, baby, hold on. One tear fell. Then another. By the time the elevator reached the lobby, the pain had become unbearable. The guards hauled her out, tossed her single suitcase, barely zipped, onto the pavement in front of the skyscraper and walked away. Just like that. Her life, her home, her dignity, gone. A crowd gathered immediately. Phones came out. Laughter. Whispers. That's the billionaire's wife. What happened to her hair? Did he kick her out? Pregnant and homeless, imagine. Amelia tried to stand, but the contractions hit again, harder this time. She collapsed onto the concrete, clutching her stomach, gasping for air. Car honked. Someone shouted at her to move. A woman filmed her crying on the sidewalk. Nobody helped her. Nobody even asked if she was okay. Her vision blurred. She was alone. Truly alone. Until 3 engines roared in the distance. Powerful. Expensive. The crowd turned. 3 black, bulletproof SUVs accelerated down the boulevard like a convoy. They didn't slow down. They didn't hesitate. They pulled up in front of her with military precision. Doors flew open. 3 men stepped out. And the entire crowd went silent. Because everyone in the city knew who they were. The Cole brothers. Xavier Cole. Lawrence Cole. Jamal Cole. The billionaire philanthropist. The ruthless corporate lawyer. The ex-military security mogul. Men who were feared. Respected. Untouchable. Men Amelia hadn't spoken to in 2 years. But men who still came the second she needed them. Xavier reached her first, dropping to his knees on the pavement, cupping her face gently. Amelia. Sweetheart, who did this to you? He choked on a sob. Elliot. Soraya. They kicked me out, they kicked me. Another contraction cut her words short. Jamal's jaw tightened. Lawrence pulled out his phone before Xavier even asked. Xavier stood up slowly. Get up, he said, his voice trembling with rage. His next words weren't shouted. They didn't need to be. Everyone heard them. Let's pay Elliot Kingston a visit. The city would talk about what happened next for years. Because the Cole brothers weren't here to negotiate. They were here for war. The black SUVs glinted under the streetlights like silent predators, engines still rumbling. The crowd had parted, leaving a corridor of space between Amara and the penthouse tower above her. Her breath came in sharp, shallow gasps as another contraction gripped her belly. But the Cole brothers were already moving, each with a calm precision that screamed danger. Xavier took her arm gently, helping her to stand. You're safe now, he said, voice low but unshakably firm. Stay close. Don't look at them. Just stay with me. Amara nodded, tears streaking her face. She could barely comprehend what was happening. Her husband and his mistress had just destroyed her life, and now 3 of the city's most powerful men were here, poised to exact justice. Lawrence's fingers tapped rapidly against his phone. Already pulled their assets. I've got records of all their accounts, liabilities, and properties. This isn't going to be pretty for them. Jamal, his presence silent but lethal, scanned the perimeter. Every security camera, every bystander with a phone, every potential witness fell under his notice. He didn't move a muscle unnecessarily, but the tension in his shoulders suggested controlled violence ready to explode. Amara barely recognized the courage she felt standing there. Part of her wanted to collapse back into the sidewalk, but seeing the men she trusted most in the world gave her strength. She clutched her belly. She started, but Xavier cut her off. Don't. Not yet. Let them see what happens when you mess with family. The elevator doors of the penthouse lobby opened behind them, and out stepped Elliot Kingston, flustered, panic in his eyes. He hadn't expected the Cole brothers. No one ever expected them. Soraya followed, smirking as if she could still command the situation. But when she saw the convoy, the smugness faltered. Her perfectly applied makeup no longer gave her power. It was almost cartoonish compared to the quiet authority of the three men before her. Elliot opened his mouth. Xavier. Don't, Xavier interrupted, voice ice cold. He stepped forward, each stride measured, deliberate. You touched her. You kicked her while she was pregnant. You humiliated her in front of your friends. And you thought no one would care. The crowd of neighbors had stopped filming. Some whispered, some gawked. But every eye in the street was glued to the confrontation unfolding. Soraya raised her chin. She's your sister, right? I don't see why you. Xavier's gaze snapped to her. Wrong answer. The silence was sudden, suffocating. Every heartbeat felt loud. Lawrence held up his phone, displaying documents already loaded on a legal database. Property titles, bank account balances, credit statements, and contracts proving Elliot had been siphoning money, falsifying records, and lying about joint ownership. Your mansion. Not yours, Lawrence said calmly, like stating a fact rather than issuing a threat. Elliot's mouth went dry. Soraya's eyes flicked nervously to him. You used her mother's money for months. You erased her contacts, isolated her. You lied about the baby's paternity. You even took out a life insurance policy on her. And you thought no one would notice. Lawrence's voice didn't rise, but the weight behind it pressed like steel. Amara's knees wobbled, but Xavier's steady grip held her upright. She felt rage coursing through her veins, mixed with relief. For months she had been powerless. Now, standing here with the men who had always protected her, she could see the reckoning unfolding. Jamal moved forward, silent and deliberate. His presence was enough to freeze the blood in Elliot's veins. Step aside, he said. It wasn't a request. Soraya instinctively moved back, but her confidence had vanished. Xavier's fist clenched. You wanted to humiliate her, right here in front of everyone. Applaud her misery. Well, congratulations. You're about to learn what happens when you underestimate family. Soraya's lip trembled. Xavier. Take off the necklace. Xavier gestured toward the diamond pendant swinging against Soraya's chest, the one that belonged to Amara's late mother. Soraya laughed nervously. Elliot gave it to me. You stole it, Xavier cut in. And it has more meaning than you'll ever comprehend. Remove it. Elliot swallowed hard, trying to find words, but nothing came. He finally muttered. She's just, you don't understand. I understand perfectly, Lawrence said, stepping closer, phone raised. You held her down while this woman assaulted her. You tried to destroy her. And for what? Money. Ego. A mistress. Soraya's smirk disappeared entirely. For the first time she seemed afraid. She looked at Elliot, hoping for support, but he shrank back. The tension exploded when Xavier leaned closer. You know what happens next. This isn't a negotiation. This is the end of the line for both of you. A siren wailed in the distance. Lawrence had already alerted authorities. Amara could hear it growing closer. Soraya's face turned pale as she realized her freedom was evaporating in real time. Wait, Xavier, please. Elliot tried to plead, but his voice cracked. No, Xavier said, voice low, deliberate, dangerous. You don't get to plead. Not now. Not ever. You don't get to apologize to her. You don't get to touch her life again. Amara gripped Xavier's arm. He turned his gaze to her. You're safe, he said. Yes, Lawrence added. You'll never face them alone again. The brothers moved as a unit, a human wall around Amara. Soraya's phone rang, her emergency contacts, the connections she thought could protect her, were already disabled by Lawrence's preemptive legal work. Every avenue closed. Jamal's gaze never left Soraya. It wasn't angry, it was calm, precise, lethal. And she understood immediately. One wrong move, one step out of line, and the consequences would be irreversible. Elliot finally backed against the glass doors of the penthouse lobby. His confidence completely shattered. His wealth, his mistress, his control, they meant nothing in the shadow of the Cole brothers. Xavier gestured. Everything you've done, every lie, every manipulation, it ends here. Amara's tears began again, but they were no longer of fear. They were tears of relief, of witnessing justice poised to strike, of knowing she would finally be protected. The sirens grew louder. Authorities were arriving. Cameras were already recording. The entire scene was about to be immortalized. And for Elliot and Soraya, the consequences were just beginning. Elliot Kingston's knees almost buckled under the weight of reality. He looked around the penthouse lobby, desperately scanning for allies but found none. Every friend, every hand-picked supporter, had evaporated under the shadow of the Cole brothers. Soraya's bravado had collapsed into pale fear. "Xavier, please, this isn't necessary." Elliot stammered, voice cracking. Sweat dripped down his temple. Xavier's eyes didn't flinch. His hands remained steady at his sides. "Necessary. You humiliated a pregnant woman. You erased her family from her life. You threatened her with death for money. What part of that isn't necessary?" Lawrence raised his phone, already recording everything. "Elliot, every word, every gesture you make right now is evidence. Every attempt to lie, manipulate, or flee will be documented. Don't make it worse for yourself." Amara leaned slightly on Xavier, her face pale, but her eyes burning. She wanted to speak, to tell him what he'd done, but the words wouldn't come. She had spent months in isolation, stripped of confidence, drained of strength. Seeing him crumble like this gave her an unfamiliar surge of power. Soraya finally spoke, her voice trembling. We didn't mean for it to get out of hand." Xavier turned his icy glare toward her. "You didn't mean. You held a knife. You humiliated her in front of witnesses. You wore her mother's jewelry and laughed while her life fell apart." Jamal moved closer, silent as a shadow. He didn't touch her, didn't threaten with words, but the mere presence of him, his stature, his calm readiness to strike, made Soraya step back. Lawrence swiped on his phone. Records confirmed. Outstanding warrants, identity fraud, multiple scams across Florida and Texas. "This isn't your first crime spree, Soraya. And it won't be your last. Except now, you'll answer for all of them." Soraya's lip trembled, and she looked desperately at Elliot. We can handle this. He can handle this." Xavier cut her off, voice low and deadly. "You mean destroy her? You mean take from her what you can't earn? You mean steal her life while she carries her child?" Elliot tried to interject, but Lawrence held up a hand. "No, Elliot. You've said enough already. Every lie, every attempt to manipulate has been exposed. Do you understand the life insurance policy? $2 million on her life, you removed her from her family, and you tried to isolate her. That's conspiracy. Fraud. Attempted manslaughter if her pregnancy complications were planned." Amara's breath caught. She had heard the words, but part of her still couldn't believe it. This was the man she loved. The man she had given her life to. He had tried to destroy her unborn child for money. Xavier stepped closer, and his presence alone seemed to bend the space around Elliot. "You thought she was powerless. You thought she was alone. You forgot one thing. Family always comes back." Jamal's calm hand swept across the lobby, scanning the exits. "Authorities are 5 minutes out. Every angle is covered. There's no escape. No manipulation. No favors. You will answer for everything." Soraya's eyes darted to the street. The crowd was growing now, whispers rising as neighbors realized the magnitude of the situation. The video of her attack on Amara had already begun circulating online, thanks to the phones of those who witnessed the assault. Her digital empire of lies was crumbling even faster than she could comprehend. Elliot's shoulders slumped. "Xavier, please. Can fix this." "I can." "You cannot fix this," Xavier interrupted, voice calm, precise, lethal. "You cannot undo the humiliation. You cannot undo the assault. You cannot erase the evidence. You cannot erase the pain you caused." Amara's lips trembled and she whispered almost to herself, I just wanted to be safe." Xavier turned to her, and his face softened, just a fraction. "You are safe now. No one touches you ever again." Lawrence added, "And everything you lost, everything stolen from you, will be returned or compensated. But justice doesn't just erase damage. It ensures consequences. They will pay Elliot. Soraya will pay." The tension in the air thickened. Soraya's phone vibrated incessantly, notifications flooding in. Lawrence had already gained access to all her online accounts and contact lists. Her empire, her secrets, her fake identities, all exposed. You can't do this," she shrieked. "You already did," Xavier said. "You underestimated one thing: loyalty, blood, family, and the power to protect those who cannot protect themselves." The first squad car pulled up. Sirens blared, lights flashing. Soraya turned to Elliot, panic in her eyes. What do we do?" Elliot shook his head, completely broken. "I don't know. I didn't think." "You didn't think," Lawrence said calmly, "because you only ever thought of yourself." Amara watched as Soraya's composure unraveled completely. Her own tears flowed freely now, but they weren't just sadness. They were relief. Fear was being replaced with power. Jamal moved closer to Elliot. "You may be a billionaire. You may have wealth. You may have influence. None of that matters here. You are accountable. You are powerless in the face of justice." Elliot's knees buckled. He sank to the floor, finally facing the humiliation he had orchestrated against Amara. Soraya covered her mouth, unable to speak. Xavier crouched slightly, voice steady, terrifyingly calm. "You destroyed her life. You thought she'd never come back. But she did. And so did we. And now, you watch everything you built collapse. Starting with you." Amara's hand trembled in Xavier's grip, but her heart raced with a mix of adrenaline, fear, and anticipation. This was more than justice. It was revenge, beautifully orchestrated, unstoppable, and inevitable. The sirens drew closer, echoing off the concrete towers, a soundtrack to the unraveling of two lives built on lies. And as Elliot and Soraya were finally confronted with the magnitude of their crimes, Amara realized something she hadn't felt in months. She was no longer powerless. Her family had returned. Her dignity, once stripped, was poised to be restored. And her unborn child safe, protected, untouchable. The scene in the lobby was only the beginning. Because the Cole brothers didn't stop at confrontation, they were just getting started. The first police car screeched to a halt at the penthouse entrance. Lights flashed, painting the lobby in blue and red, reflecting off marble floors and crystal chandeliers. Amara's hands gripped Xavier's arm as she watched Elliot Kingston's face twist in panic. Soraya's knees buckled, and for the first time, the mistress looked genuinely afraid. "Step aside," an officer commanded, gun holstered but voice authoritative. "Everyone stay calm." Xavier didn't move an inch, his gaze fixed on Elliot and Soraya. He didn't need to speak. His presence alone radiated authority and unspoken consequences. Lawrence had already begun submitting the digital files of Soraya's crimes to the lead detective. Every bank statement, property title, and forged document was in the hands of law enforcement. "Amara Kingston?" the officer asked, looking at her with concern. "Yes," she said softly, clutching her stomach. Her legs trembled, not from fear, but from the adrenaline still surging through her. You're safe now. We have reports of threats and assault here, the officer continued, eyes narrowing at Elliot and Soraya. You'll have to come with us for questioning. Elliot stumbled backward, eyes darting between Xavier, the police, and the cameras that were already capturing every moment. Soraya's face had turned ashen. She tried to speak, but words failed her. This is your last chance, Xavier said quietly, his voice carrying over the sirens and the murmurs of neighbors. Everything you've done is recorded. Every lie, every assault, every fraud. Don't try to escape. Don't try to manipulate. You are finished. Soraya finally made a desperate move, stepping toward Elliot as if to reassure herself. But Jamal's shadow loomed, silent, calm, terrifying. One step from him was enough to make her stop. She froze. The officer stepped forward, reading out the warrants. Soraya Kingston, you are under arrest for fraud, identity theft, and assault. Elliot Kingston, you are being held for questioning regarding conspiracy, assault, and fraud related to your spouse's life insurance and assets. Elliot opened his mouth, but no sound came. Soraya screamed, lashing out in panic, but the officers restrained her easily. Amara took a shaky breath, still leaning on Xavier. It's over, she whispered. No, Xavier corrected gently. This is just the beginning. We make sure they never hurt you or anyone else again. The police escorted Soraya and Elliot into the first car, the flashing lights painting the streets like a warning. Neighbors whispered, some filming, others gasping. The story of Amara's humiliation was now public, viral even before social media amplified it. Amara's phone had been destroyed, but she didn't need it. Lawrence had already ensured her privacy was protected. Any recordings the neighbors had taken were already being used as evidence. Her story was no longer confined to whispers. It was documented, undeniable. Xavier helped her to the waiting SUVs. We'll get you home. No interruptions. No more threats. As they drove away, Amara looked back at the penthouse, her stomach tightening, not from contractions this time, but from the knowledge that everything Elliot and Soraya had built was crumbling behind them. Lawrence spoke from the front seat, voice calm but authoritative. I've already frozen all accounts linked to them. Their joint assets, all properties, luxury cars, everything is under legal review. By tomorrow, Elliot will have lost almost everything he considered untouchable. Jamal, silent until now, added, and the investigation into Soraya's past. It's just a matter of time before authorities uncover every scam, every fraud. She won't see freedom for years. Amara's fingers tightened around her belly. I can't believe it's happening. I thought I was truly alone. You weren't, Xavier said firmly. Even when you felt isolated, we were always looking, always waiting for the right moment. And now, justice has arrived. The SUVs stopped in a private compound, Xavier's estate. Inside, Amara was greeted by a quiet, serene environment. Nurses and medical staff were waiting, ready to ensure her safety and monitor her pregnancy. The nursery was already being prepared, every detail considered for comfort, safety, and love. As she settled into a room, Xavier handed her a glass of water. Take a moment. Breathe. You're not going back there. Not ever. Amara closed her eyes, letting the tears flow freely. Relief and fear, exhaustion and gratitude, mixed into an overwhelming wave. Will they be punished? She asked softly. They will, Lawrence said. But the important part is that you're safe. That baby is safe. And they can't touch you again. Not financially, not physically, not emotionally. Everything they tried to destroy, rebuilding starts now. The door opened again, and Jamal stepped in, carrying documents for Amara to review. We've already begun the process. Property restoration, legal action against Elliot, and full protection for you and your child. You won't have to worry about anything. Amara's hands shook as she took the papers. For the first time in months, she felt a sense of control returning to her life. Xavier sat beside her, voice gentle. You don't have to forgive him, You don't have to forget. But you can move forward now. With us. Always with us. Amara looked at her brothers, at the men who had always protected her silently, and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Unshakable safety. Hours later, as she rested, her mind wandered to the public fallout. Social media was exploding. Neighbors' videos had gone viral. News outlets were already covering the scandal. Elliot Kingston, the billionaire playboy, and his mistress were the talk of the city. Their arrogance, cruelty, and greed had been exposed to millions. She smiled faintly. Not because she took pleasure in their downfall, but because the truth had finally been revealed. For so long, she had been invisible, silenced, and powerless. Now she had voice, protection, and family. And outside the windows, the city didn't know it yet, but the Cole brothers had only just begun. Every move Elliot and Soraya made from this point forward would be watched, controlled, and dismantled if necessary. Amara's life wasn't just returning to normal. It was being rebuilt stronger, safer, and unbreakable. She closed her eyes, listening to the soft hum of the air conditioning, feeling the gentle kick of her unborn child. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to hope. Because she knew the storm had passed, and the sun was rising. The morning sunlight hit the city skyline, but it did little to soften the storm that was about to unfold. News alerts, social media posts, and viral videos of Elliot Kingston and Soraya's humiliation had exploded overnight. Every major outlet had picked up the story. Billionaire's wife assaulted, mistress arrested, family steps in to protect. The city was buzzing, gossip and outrage spreading like wildfire. Amara sat in Xavier's office, her short, freshly regrown hair pulled into a neat bun. She sipped coffee, still trembling from the adrenaline of the night before. Lawrence and Jamal were already at work, laptops open, phones buzzing with updates. Xavier leaned back in his chair, watching her carefully, a protective wall of calm around her. "They're everywhere," Amara whispered. "I saw at least 50 different clips online this morning. People are commenting, calling them out, sharing everything." "Good," Xavier said, voice low but steady. "Let the world see. Let them understand what happens when you hurt someone who isn't alone, someone who has family who will never let you break them." Lawrence tapped rapidly at his keyboard. "I've already contacted their business partners. Elliot's companies are being investigated for fraud. Any contracts he had on hold. Any investors pulling out. The mistress's fraud cases from previous dates are being revived. She's not walking free for a very long time." Jamal's calm voice cut in. "I've also ensured all their social media accounts are being archived. Every lie, every smear campaign, every attempt to manipulate public opinion is being preserved for legal action. They can't erase their digital footprint." Amara's chest tightened. The weight of what had been done to her was still raw, still heavy. But seeing the meticulous dismantling of her enemies' lives gave her a strange sense of satisfaction. Not revenge exactly, but justice, precise and unstoppable. Xavier reached across the desk and took her hand. "You did nothing wrong. You survived. That's what matters. The rest, we handle." Hours later, a press conference had been organized. It wasn't Amara's idea. Her brothers had taken full control, but they had ensured she would be safe, shielded, and only included if she chose to speak. Reporters crowded the courtyard of Xavier's compound. Cameras flashed. Microphones jutted forward. Xavier stood at the center, Lawrence on one side, Jamal on the other. Amara observed from a secure balcony above. Her hands clasped tightly around the railing. Xavier addressed the crowd with calm authority. Yesterday, an innocent woman was assaulted by her husband and his accomplice. She was pregnant, isolated, and vulnerable. Thanks to rapid intervention and the cooperation of law enforcement, the perpetrators have been apprehended, and justice is already in motion. The reporters erupted with questions, cameras flashing. Xavier raised a hand. "Let me be clear. The woman's identity is protected. She is safe under the care of her family. No one is allowed to threaten or harass her. And anyone attempting to interfere will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. One reporter called out, "Mr. Kingston, your company released a statement about the incident. Can you comment?" Xavier's eyes narrowed. Elliot Kingston no longer has authority over any of his companies. Every asset, every partnership, every account is under legal review. He is being held accountable for fraud, conspiracy, and assault. His accomplice, who has a history of criminal activity, is also under investigation and will face justice. The cameras caught every detail. The panic on Soraya's face as she was escorted into a police van the night before, Elliot's crumbling composure, the digital and physical evidence piling up against them. Lawrence addressed the financial fallout. Any attempt to liquidate assets or escape responsibility will be legally blocked. Elliot Kingston and Soraya Kingston underestimated the power of accountability. They also underestimated family loyalty. Every victim of their actions, financial, emotional, or physical, will see justice. Amara felt a strange mix of relief and anger. Relief that she was safe, anger for the months she had endured, anger at the cruelty she had survived. She looked down at her belly, feeling the kick of her unborn child, and whispered, "We made it, we're going to make it." Meanwhile, social media exploded. Viral clips of the penthouse confrontation, police arresting Soraya, and Elliot's collapse were everywhere. Hashtags like #Justice for Amara, #BillionaireExposed, and #ColeBrothersJustice were trending nationwide. Ordinary citizens discussed the story with disbelief, admiration, and outrage. The city knew that a powerful man had been brought low, not by scandal, but by the careful, calculated intervention of family. At Xavier's compound, Lawrence continued his work. "I've contacted every lawyer, every bank, every potential creditor. Elliot's financial empire is frozen. Soraya's assets are frozen. By tonight, they won't even have access to their private accounts." Jamal added, "And their personal safety. Threats already being monitored. They can't hide. They can't manipulate anyone anymore." Xavier leaned back, watching Amara. "This isn't just about revenge. It's about setting things right. You were stripped of your dignity, your family, and your safety. That ends now. And it ends in a way that makes sure it never happens again." Amara took a deep breath. I feel free," she whispered. "But I want them to feel the consequences. I want people to see everything they did. The lies, the cruelty, everything." Lawrence smiled slightly. "You're going to get that. And more. The world will see. The authorities will see. And they will pay. But you will never see them again. Not in power, not in control, not in your life." Hours passed as the Cole brothers coordinated with lawyers, law enforcement, and media outlets. Every move Elliot and Soraya had made was countered. Frozen assets, revoked contracts, criminal investigations, public exposure. Every action that could hurt Amara was neutralized. That evening, as the sun dipped below the skyline, Amara stepped onto the balcony of her temporary suite. The city stretched below her, lights flickering like stars. For months, she had been invisible, silenced, isolated, powerless. Now she was seen, protected, loved. Her brothers stood behind her, silent and steadfast. The protectors she had always needed but hadn't realized were still waiting. Amara placed a hand on her belly. "We're safe. I'm safe. And they're finished." Xavier nodded. "And that's just the beginning. There's more to be done, but today you've reclaimed your life. Your child's life. And no one will ever take that away again." As night fell over the city, the viral story of the billionaire's mistress and the assaulted pregnant wife became a legend in the making. Everyone who had doubted Amara's survival, her strength, and the power of family would now learn the hard truth. Never underestimate a woman protected by blood, loyalty, and unshakable resolve. The city was buzzing. Every news outlet, every social media platform, every influencer had picked up the story of Elliot Kingston and Soraya's downfall. What had started as a private, horrifying attack on Amara had exploded into a nationwide scandal. And the more the world learned, the more complete their humiliation became. Xavier, Lawrence, and Jamal gathered in the Cole brothers' private boardroom. Screens displayed stock graphs, legal documents, and live social media feeds. Amara sat beside them, feeling safer than she had in months. But safety was no longer passive, it was active. With her brothers at her side, she began taking back every piece of her life that had been stolen. Lawrence tapped on a screen showing Elliot's business empire. "We've already contacted all investors. Most have pulled out. Banks are freezing his assets. Every contract that gives him leverage. Within 48 hours, he'll have nothing to operate with." Amara leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "And Soraya? She's already in custody," Xavier replied, his tone deadly calm. "And thanks to Lawrence, all of her prior crimes in other states have been revived. She won't see freedom for a long time." Jamal added, "We've also reached out to former employees and associates of both Elliot and Soraya. Anyone who tried to manipulate, silence, or take advantage of Amara will be held accountable. Public exposure isn't just humiliation, it's protection." Amara's hands tightened around her cup. "I want people to know everything. I want them to see how they thought they could get away with it. How they humiliated me, tried to isolate me, tried to ruin my life before my baby even arrived." Xavier's gaze softened slightly. "You're ready for this, aren't you?" She nodded. "More than I ever thought I could be." Within hours, the story had gone viral in ways even Amara hadn't anticipated. Clips of the penthouse confrontation, police arrests, and the Cole brothers' dramatic entrance were shared millions of times. Comments poured in: outrage, admiration, support. Elliot's empire crumbled under public scrutiny while Soraya's fake identities and criminal history were exposed for the first time. Lawrence spoke over the chaos. "I've already drafted legal notices. Every claim they try to make against us or Amara is nullified. Every lie they spread will be used against them. Their social media accounts, their websites, every form of communication is frozen or monitored." Amara felt a sense of calm she hadn't known in months. For so long she had been a target, a victim, a pawn. Now, with the full weight of her family and the law behind her, she felt unstoppable. Hours later, Elliot tried to reach out to his business partners. Emails, phone calls, personal messages. Every attempt was met with silence or polite refusal. His employees had already been warned. Banks denied him access to funds. Every luxury asset he owned was under investigation. Soraya, in her jail cell, finally realized the magnitude of her mistakes. Her confidence, so unshakable just days before, was now gone. She had laughed at Amara, mocked her, humiliated her. And now the woman she had tormented was thriving, protected, and untouchable. Amara allowed herself a small, bitter smile. She didn't celebrate cruelty, she celebrated survival. The humiliation she had endured was hers alone to bear, but justice would now follow those who had inflicted it. Xavier approached her, voice quiet but firm. "They thought they could destroy you. They thought isolation would work. They underestimated family, loyalty, and the truth. And now they're learning the hard way. Nothing escapes accountability." Amara's eyes glistened. "I feel powerful. Not like I did before. Not because I'm rich or anything like that, but because I survived. Because I'm reclaiming my life. Because my baby, and I, are finally safe." Lawrence added, "This is the turning point. From now on, every move they make is recorded, tracked, and exposed. They have no leverage, no allies, no escape. The public humiliation is just the beginning. Legal consequences, financial ruin, and social disgrace follow immediately." Jamal leaned against the table, silent for a moment before speaking. "And this isn't over yet. They may try to recover, they may try to manipulate, but we're ahead at every step. And you're untouchable now, as long as we're here." The phone rang. Lawrence answered, a slight frown forming. "Yes, Missy." "Understood." He hung up and looked at Amara. "Good news. Authorities have already obtained an emergency court order freezing Elliot's personal assets and business holdings. Soraya's previous identity fraud cases have been combined with new evidence. They'll be in custody indefinitely. Amara let out a slow breath. The storm she had feared for months, the sense that she could be hurt again, that her unborn child was at risk, was finally passing. Xavier reached for her hand again. And remember this. What happened to you was never your fault. What they tried to do, how they tried to break you. It's on them. You are not responsible for their cruelty. Hours later, the family gathered in the nursery, watching as the space intended for her baby slowly took shape. Soft sage green walls, plush toys, and every detail carefully considered. Amara smiled as she imagined her daughter growing up in a home of safety, love, and protection. I never thought I'd feel this again, she whispered. Hope, relief, strength. Xavier knelt beside her, voice low, powerful. You will never feel powerless again. That's the difference. You've endured, you've survived, and you've reclaimed your life. Nothing can touch you now. Outside, the city continued to buzz with news of Elliot and Soraya's humiliation. Online forums dissected every detail. Financial news covered the collapse of Elliot's companies, and social media amplified the story of Amara's resilience. People were fascinated, enraged, inspired. And the Cole brothers' careful orchestration ensured that every move was accounted for. Amara stood on the balcony that evening, hand on her belly, feeling a kick from her unborn child. We survived, she whispered. And we'll thrive. Xavier joined her, his presence steady and reassuring. Yes, and they'll never hurt us again. For the first time in months, Amara allowed herself to feel truly free. Free from fear, free from isolation, and free from the shadow of the people who had tried to destroy her. Because justice had arrived. Because family had arrived. And because she, Amara Kingston, was unbreakable. The early morning city air was thick with anticipation. Every news channel, every social media feed, every online forum was alive with Elliot Kingston and Soraya's downfall. But while the world watched the scandal unfold, the Cole brothers were quietly preparing for the next stage, the total dismantling of the empire that had humiliated Amara. Amara sat at the head of the conference table in Xavier's penthouse-style office, the morning sunlight reflecting off the glass walls. She sipped her tea, her short hair perfectly styled, her posture steady and deliberate. For months, she had felt powerless. Today she felt something else, control. Lawrence tapped rapidly on his laptop, sending encrypted messages and reviewing legal documents. Elliot's accounts are frozen. Soraya's previous scams are now being fully prosecuted. His business partners are being warned that any support for him will result in liability on their end. By the end of the week, his reputation will be irreparably damaged. Amara looked at him, her voice calm but firm. I want it done fast. I don't want him to recover. Not in any way. Xavier leaned back, arms crossed. That's the plan. Everything is calculated. Every asset frozen, every lie exposed, every partner aware of the consequences. They underestimated us and underestimated you. That won't happen again. Jamal, who had been monitoring social media trends, added, the public response is overwhelming. People are outraged, supportive, and ready to see justice served. Any attempt by Elliot or Soraya to spin the narrative will be countered immediately. They have no allies, no influence left. Amara's hands tightened around her mug. I still can't believe it. All the humiliation, the haircutting, the pushing, the isolation. All of it. And now they're powerless. They're more than powerless, they're exposed, Xavier said. And everyone who sees them knows it. Their empire is crumbling from within. Their lies, their manipulation, everything is documented. The world is watching, and justice isn't something that can be hidden anymore. Hours later, Lawrence and Jamal coordinated a series of legal and financial strikes. Bank accounts were permanently seized. Credit cards cancelled, business deals voided. Every luxury car, every property, Every asset tied to Elliot and Soraya was frozen. Soraya's previous identities and criminal history were now fully cross-referenced with current investigations. Amara watched the screen as notifications popped up. Each one was a victory. Each one a nail in the coffin of the people who had tried to destroy her. Her chest tightened, not with fear, but with a sense of triumph. She was witnessing justice being executed with precision. Xavier leaned in close, voice quiet but intense. "You've survived, Amara. You've endured everything they threw at you. And now, for the first time, they're the ones afraid. Every move they make, every attempt at manipulation, every attempt at power, they'll be met with consequences. And we're watching." Amara's phone buzzed. It was a neighbor's video. Soraya, still in handcuffs, being led into a police van, screaming and crying. Elliot was standing outside, his face pale and tense, surrounded by news cameras and flashing lights. The contrast was stark. The woman who had humiliated Amara was now powerless, and the man who had allowed it was crumbling under scrutiny. "I can't believe this is real," Amara whispered. "All of it finally paying off." Lawrence smiled faintly. "It's real. And it's just the beginning. Public exposure, legal action, and financial ruin are only the first wave. The second wave, ensuring they never hurt anyone again. That starts with dismantling everything they've built that could harm someone." Xavier nodded. "And it will be done. With or without their cooperation. They miscalculated. They thought power, wealth, and manipulation would shield them. They were wrong. You have family. You have protection. And now, the world knows who you are and what you survived." By afternoon, the city's headlines screamed Elliot and Soraya's disgrace. Billionaire and mistress exposed, wife assaulted, assets frozen, pregnant wife rescued by brothers, empire crumbles, Cole brothers deliver justice in viral confrontation. Every article chronicled the precise details: the haircutting, the humiliation, the isolation, the calculated rescue. Every detail of Elliot's insurance schemes, Soraya's fraud, and their repeated cruelty was documented. Amara felt a rush of emotions: relief, vindication, and an odd sense of calm. She had survived the worst. And now she was watching the consequences unfold, knowing that her life, and her child's life, would never again be threatened by them. That evening, the brothers convened for a final strike. Lawrence called the bank executives personally, ensuring that any remaining transactions or attempts by Elliot to liquidate his assets would be intercepted. Jamal monitored all social media accounts, ready to counter any false narratives. Xavier coordinated with law enforcement to guarantee swift prosecution and public accountability. Amara watched as every move unfolded. She no longer felt fear. She felt power, strength, and a clarity she hadn't known before. Every humiliation, every fear-filled moment, every tear shed, it had all led to this. Justice executed with precision, her life protected, her enemies powerless. Finally, as night fell, Amara sat alone in the nursery, her hand on her belly. The room smelled faintly of fresh paint and new beginnings. She whispered softly, "We survived. And they're finished. Forever." Outside, the city lights twinkled, but in the quiet of her home, she felt something stronger than the buzz of scandal. She felt safety. She felt family. She felt the first real sense of hope she had known in months. The storm was over, but the lesson was clear. Cruelty has limits. Lies have consequences. And no power, no wealth, and no manipulation can ever break someone protected by love, loyalty, and truth. The morning sunlight barely penetrated the thick blinds of the police station, but Soraya Kingston's cell felt even darker. The mistress who had once mocked Amara, cut her hair, and humiliated her in front of neighbors was finally facing the consequences she had long ignored. Handcuffed, shackled, and stripped of every luxury she once flaunted, Soraya paced back and forth, eyes darting at the bars and the camera monitoring her. She was used to controlling everyone and everything, manipulating lives for her benefit. But now she realized she was powerless. For the first time, fear replaced arrogance. "Did you think this would be easy?" a calm voice said from the doorway. Jamal stepped in, his designer suit impeccable, every step deliberate. Soraya froze, recognizing him immediately from the viral videos. "You," she hissed. You're just one man." Jamal's expression didn't change. "One man. I'm one of 3. And the one standing behind you is a family who doesn't tolerate cruelty." Her eyes widened. You don't understand. I did what I had to do. He wanted me. Stop," Jamal said sharply. "You humiliated a pregnant woman. You tried to ruin her life. You mocked her, stripped her dignity, and flaunted your crime in front of her neighbors. And now, for every action you took, there is a consequence. The law is just the beginning." Soraya's confidence wavered. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. Jamal's phone buzzed, and he showed her a screen. News headlines detailing her fraud, her previous aliases, and multiple outstanding warrants in several states. Each headline had her face, every detail cross-referenced, every victim documented. She's, Soraya stammered. "She's you," Jamal said. "And the world is watching. There's nowhere to hide. Every lie, every scam, every act of cruelty you thought you could escape. Expose. And it's only getting started." Meanwhile, across town, Elliot Kingston sat in his high-rise apartment. Empty, silent, stripped of his luxury, surrounded by paperwork that made his stomach churn. He had called lawyers, bank executives, and investors, but every phone call ended in refusal, every account frozen, every deal cancelled. The man who once commanded billions now sat with nothing, the world mocking him in real time on every news feed. The contrast between the two villains could not have been more stark. Soraya, trapped in a cell, unable to manipulate anyone. Elliot, stripped of power, humiliated, and paralyzed by the speed of justice. Back at the Cole compound, Amara watched the updates with her brothers. Xavier leaned over her shoulder. "You see that?" "Yes," Amara whispered. "They're finally paying for everything." "They will continue paying," Lawrence added. "Financial ruin, legal action, social exposure. And with law enforcement monitoring every move, there's no escape. You're finally safe." Jamal smirked slightly. "And let's not forget, social media is relentless. Every clip of their arrogance and cruelty is being shared. They're infamous now. Infamous for being the people who humiliated a pregnant woman and lost everything in days." Amara's heart swelled. For months, she had felt powerless, isolated, and humiliated. Now, she felt a sense of power she had never known before. She had survived, yes, but she had also reclaimed her life and seen justice served with unrelenting precision. Hours later, Soraya was escorted to a hearing. Cameras flashed, capturing her face, every sneer, every forced smile. Every reporter knew who she was, every social media feed highlighted her history, and every headline exposed her lies. She had no shield, no protection, no influence. She was alone, finally, fully, irreversibly. The hearing was swift. Soraya's prior fraud cases, combined with the assault on Amara, ensured maximum charges. The judge, citing the overwhelming evidence and her repeated pattern of criminal behavior, set a long-term prison sentence. No leniency, no excuses. Amara sat in the back of the courtroom, her short hair neatly styled, her hand on her belly. Her brothers flanked her, their presence steady, protective, unyielding. For the first time, she felt a sense of closure. She didn't celebrate cruelty, but she celebrated justice, survival, and the protection of her unborn child. Outside the courthouse, reporters crowded, cameras flashing. The headline screamed, "Mistress arrested, billionaire wife's brothers ensure justice, pregnant woman protected by family, mistress convicted, Cole brothers strike back, empire of cruelty collapses." Amara breathed deeply, the wind hitting her face. "It's over," she whispered. Xavier placed a firm hand on her shoulder. "It's never really over. The world is watching. But as long as we're here, nothing can hurt you or your baby. Nothing. You survived their cruelty. And now they survive only because we allowed it to be contained by law." Lawrence added, Financial ruin, legal consequences, social disgrace. That's what survival looks like for them now. And you? You get to live your life. Amara's gaze drifted to her belly. And she'll grow up in a world that's safe. Not perfect, not without danger, but safe. And loved. As night fell, the city continued to buzz with the scandal. Soraya was behind bars. Elliot's empire crumbled. Every account, every property, every business deal he once controlled had been dismantled with precision. For the first time in months, Amara allowed herself a smile. Not of revenge, but of liberation. She had survived the unimaginable. She had been humiliated, isolated, and threatened. And yet she was here, strong, protected, and thriving. Xavier watched her quietly. You have survived. You have reclaimed your life. And the people who tried to break you are powerless. Remember that. Amara placed her hand over her belly, feeling the baby stir. I will remember. Always. And I will never let anyone isolate or hurt us again. Jamal's phone buzzed one last time. A news alert popped up. Elliot Kingston had attempted to liquidate one last property, but the court froze it immediately. Another headline. Billionaire reduced to nothing. Wife's family ensures justice. Amara smiled softly. We survived, she whispered. And now we thrive. Outside, the city lights sparkled, but inside, Amara felt something stronger than the glow of the skyline. She felt safety, love, and the unbreakable bond of family. The storm had passed, but the lesson was clear. Cruelty has consequences, lies are exposed, and no one underestimates the power of a woman protected by family. The city had finally caught its breath. Or at least, the people watching the saga unfold had. Amara sat in the newly renovated nursery, her hand resting gently on her belly. The room was peaceful, painted in soft sage green, filled with plush toys and blankets arranged with meticulous care. For the first time in months, she could feel a flicker of real peace. But peace was not passivity. Amara had survived the worst, and now the work of reclaiming her life, of taking back everything stolen from her, was just beginning. Xavier, Lawrence, and Jamal flanked her, each silently checking documents, coordinating moves, and monitoring the fallout from Elliot and Soraya's downfall. Even now, weeks after the initial exposure, the ripple effect was still powerful. Lawrence broke the silence first. Elliot tried to sell one of his remaining properties today. Court froze it within the hour. Social media caught wind. And now the hashtag Elliot Kingston fraud is trending worldwide. He has no cash, no allies, and no credibility left. Jamal smirked. Soraya's appeal was denied this morning. She'll serve the full 6-year sentence without parole for fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. She tried to manipulate everyone she could, but public exposure and law enforcement coordination ensured no loopholes. Amara's heart beat faster. And the insurance? She asked quietly, almost afraid to speak. Xavier's eyes softened. The policy that would have killed you. Cancelled. Reversed. Michael Kingston has no claim, legally or financially. He's fully accountable now. Child support, damages, legal fees. He's responsible for every cent, and even that is tightly monitored. Amara exhaled, a small but genuine smile tugging at her lips. I can finally breathe. The brothers exchanged glances. Xavier spoke again, voice firm. And you will. But let's not forget the bigger picture. They humiliated you. They cut you down when you were most vulnerable. You were isolated, terrified, and powerless. That won't happen again. Not to you. Not to your daughter. Hours later, Amara and her brothers traveled to Elliot's primary property, the one he had tried desperately to protect. It was empty now, a shell of the empire he had once flaunted. The windows were boarded, the gates locked, and a forfeit notice slapped across the front entrance. The weight of justice was visible in every detail. Lawrence gestured toward the building. Everything here is now under court order. Anything remaining will be auctioned off for victims of Soraya's scams and for charitable foundations supporting women in crisis. Amara's jaw tightened. They thought they could humiliate me, hurt me, and take everything. And now, they're giving back to people they never even thought about. Xavier placed a hand on her shoulder. That's the difference. We build, they destroy. We protect, they exploit. And every action has a consequence. This is just the beginning of reclaiming your life. By evening, Amara returned home, the soft glow of her new house reflecting off the walls. Every piece of furniture, every decoration, every detail had been selected with care, not as a show of wealth, but as a reclamation of identity. The nursery now stood complete, a sanctuary for her daughter and a symbol of strength. As she settled on the couch, Xavier and Jamal pulled up the latest updates on Elliot and Soraya. Every social media platform, every news article, every trending hashtag told the same story. Billionaire and mistress humiliated, assets frozen, justice served. Amara let herself smile fully for the first time. It's beautiful, she whispered. Jamal leaned back. Not just beautiful, it's justice. And it's lasting. They can try to recover, they can try to manipulate, but the world is watching. They've already lost everything that mattered. Power, influence, credibility, gone. Xavier added, voice low but firm. And they'll never touch you or your family again. Not with us around. Not ever. The doorbell rang suddenly, breaking the quiet. Amara hesitated, heart fluttering. She didn't expect anyone. Who could still bring trouble into her home? Xavier opened the door, and a delivery man stood there with a small package. Inside, Amara found her mother's jewelry box, carefully wrapped, untouched, returned by a private legal courier with documentation ensuring its security. She felt tears prick at her eyes. The piece of her past, of her mother's memory, had survived. They tried to take everything, Amara whispered, clutching the box. But they couldn't touch this. No, Xavier said quietly. And they'll never touch it, or you again. That night, the family gathered for dinner. Xavier, Lawrence, and Jamal, Amara, and the soft hum of anticipation for the baby filled the house. For the first time, laughter returned, genuine and unforced. Stories were shared, small victories celebrated, and Amara felt the unshakable bond of family around her. This is what you were missing, Xavier said softly, looking at Amara. You thought you had to survive alone. But survival is stronger with those who love you. And protection. Protection is permanent when we're together. Amara looked around at her brothers, each one a pillar of strength, each one a guardian of her life. I forgot what that felt like. To be protected. To be loved without condition. And now you remember, Jamal said with a faint smile. And no one will ever take that from you again. Meanwhile, Elliot tried to negotiate, tried to regain control, tried to spin the story, but every attempt failed. Banks refused, former partners abandoned him, social media mocked him, and legal authorities blocked every move. He was stripped of everything: power, wealth, and reputation. Soraya, behind bars, could only watch as her carefully constructed lies unraveled. Amara, in her home, felt a calm she hadn't known in months. She could finally imagine the future. A life of peace, her child's laughter filling the nursery, family surrounding her, and the knowledge that those who had tried to destroy her had been brought to justice. And as she placed her hand on her belly, feeling her daughter kick softly, she whispered, "We survived, and we're thriving. Forever." The storm had passed. But the lessons remained. Cruelty has consequences, isolation has limits, and love, true, unwavering, protective love, prevails above all else. The first light of dawn spilled over the skyline, golden and warm, a stark contrast to the darkness that had haunted Amara for months. She sat on the balcony of her newly redecorated home, her hand gently resting on her belly. The air was crisp, filled with the quiet hum of a city that didn't yet know her full story, but she did. Beside her, Xavier, Lawrence, and Jamal leaned against the railing, silent, protective, and steady. Their presence wasn't just comforting, it was a shield that no force could penetrate. Amara breathed in deeply, savoring the sensation of safety, of liberation, of finally being in control of her life. This morning feels different, Amara whispered, voice barely audible. Peaceful. Like the world owes me nothing now. Xavier placed a firm hand on her shoulder. It doesn't owe you anything. But you've earned everything: strength, safety, love. And nothing they've done, nothing they ever will do, can take that away. Amara's gaze drifted to the nursery. The soft sage-green walls, the neatly arranged toys, the baby crib prepared for the little life growing inside her. It all felt tangible, real, and hers. I used to think I had to fight alone, she said quietly. That asking for help made me weak. Lawrence shook his head. No, asking for help saved you. You survived because you reached out. Because you trusted your family. True strength isn't isolation. It's knowing who will stand by you when the storm hits. Jamal added, voice low but sharp. And the storm hit hard. You faced cruelty, humiliation, betrayal. But look at them now. Elliot, Soraya. They're powerless, exposed, and accountable. Publicly, financially, legally. Nothing left. They can't touch you. Not your life, not your child, not your dignity. Amara allowed herself a small, victorious smile. It's surreal. All of it. The humiliation, the pain. And now this. Freedom. Safety. Justice. The phone buzzed. A message from the lawyer confirmed. All of Elliot's remaining assets were being liquidated, with proceeds allocated to victims of Soraya's scams, charities supporting abused women, and Amara's own legal fees fully covered. Child support payments were scheduled monthly, enforceable immediately, and Michael's attempts to contest the arrangements were denied. Amara looked at her brothers, eyes glistening. They really can't touch me anymore. Xavier nodded. Never again. And if they try, the consequences will be immediate, severe, and public. You are untouchable, Amara. Not because of wealth, but because of truth, family, and justice. The morning continued quietly. Amara and her brothers walked through the house together, checking the rooms, ensuring every detail was perfect for her daughter. Even small things, the crib, the blankets, the books, symbolized a life rebuilt, a sanctuary reclaimed. Later that afternoon, the city's news cycle had settled into a quiet fascination with the story. Elliot Kingston, once a titan of business and social circles, was now a cautionary tale of arrogance, cruelty, and entitlement. Soraya Kingston, his mistress, was serving a multi-year sentence, her criminal record now public and irreversible. Amara watched it all from the safety of her home, her short hair catching the sunlight. Each headline, each viral clip, each social media thread confirmed a truth she had known for months. Justice had arrived, and it had been swift, decisive, and unstoppable. Her phone rang. It was a friend she hadn't spoken to in years, someone Michael had cut her off from. Amara. I saw everything, the friend said, voice trembling. I can't imagine what you went through. But you're alive. You're okay. And you're thriving. Amara smiled softly, a warmth spreading through her chest. Yes, him. Finally. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the family gathered for the first dinner in the house where Amara would truly feel safe. Xavier, Lawrence, and Jamal flanked her, protective and proud. The table was set simply but beautifully, a symbol of the life they had rebuilt together. Look around you, Xavier said quietly. This is what survival looks like. Love, family, safety, laughter, justice. And it's all yours to keep. Amara's gaze drifted to her belly, feeling her daughter kick for the first time that evening. And soon, she whispered, this little one will know what it means to be safe, loved, and protected. No one will ever hurt her like they hurt me. Lawrence leaned back satisfied. They tried. And they failed. Completely. Publicly. Financially. Legally. Socially. There is no escape for people like that once the truth comes to light. And we made sure it did. Jamal's phone buzzed. Another news alert. Elliot had attempted one last desperate move, liquidating a personal vehicle, but the court blocked it immediately. Headlines mocked him. Billionaire reduced to nothing. Wife and brothers ensure justice. Amara allowed herself a full, unrestrained laugh for the first time in months. Not cruelty, not revenge, but liberation. "We survived," she said. "We endured. We thrived. And no one, not him, not Soraya, not anyone, will ever take this from us again." Xavier placed a firm hand on her shoulder. "You are unbreakable, Amara. Not because of wealth or power, but because you survived what no one should have to endure. And because you have family, love, and the truth on your side. That makes you untouchable." As night fell, Amara stood on the balcony again, gazing out at the city. The skyline glittered like 1,000 possibilities, a testament to resilience, survival, and triumph. Her hand rested on her belly, feeling the gentle movements of her unborn child. "This is just the beginning," she whispered. "Of life, of love, of protection, of family, and of everything they thought they could take from me." Inside, the house was quiet but full of warmth. The nursery awaited its first occupant. The family gathered, the brothers' presence unwavering, and Amara finally felt complete, safe, loved, and free from the shadow of cruelty. And in the quiet of her new life, she made a promise. No one would ever isolate her again. No one would ever humiliate her again. No one would ever threaten the life of her child or the bond of her family. The storm had passed. The darkness had lifted. And the dawn of Amara's freedom, power, and unbreakable identity had arrived. She smiled, feeling the kick of her daughter once more. "We are alive. We are thriving. And this time nothing, not cruelty, not betrayal, not greed, can touch us." The world had witnessed the fall of a billionaire, the capture of a mistress, and the rise of a woman who refused to be broken. And now, Amara Kingston was finally free. Amara's story reminds us that no one can take away your dignity, your family, or your future if you fight for it, and that even in the darkest moments, hope, courage, and love can shine brighter than any betrayal. She survived humiliation, isolation, and cruelty, and came out stronger, protected, and thriving. This is more than revenge. It's justice, empowerment, and the triumph of family. If this story moved you, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications because we share real, jaw-dropping stories like this every single week. Drop a comment below and tell us. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted? How did you fight back? Your story could inspire someone else to survive and thrive, just like Amara.